President Trump face-to-face with Vladimir Putin. It's going on right now. The U.S. and Russia prepared apparently to announce a ceasefire in southwest Syria starting on Sunday. That, according to the AP, to former CIA analyst Tara Mahler on what we can expect from all of this. Tara, first of all, the expectations of the media obviously far different from the sort of stuff that we expect because we think outside of the box. They're saying that Putin is going to eat Trump's lunch. That's actually a headline in Business Insider, that he is not prepared for a meeting. He doesn't have an agenda, to which I would say, what meeting does the president of the U.S. ever go into without an agenda? Aren't folks like you always prepping presidents for that?
Hopefully there was an agenda going into this, and I'd hope that on the agenda, Syria hopefully was top and center, and I think we're hearing now that it was. I hope the Ukraine was at the top of the agenda, and I hope that cyber hacking related to the election and other cybersecurity concerns related to Russia's intervention in the election and otherwise were on the agenda. So I think hopefully those 3 points were hit. There's obviously other issue areas of concern with the Russians and globally. North Korea, top security matter, that probably made it onto the list. I think some of the concerns were not that there wasn't an agenda. It's just that President Trump sometimes does stray from the script that his advisors have put before him. So hopefully he's stuck on message. Hopefully this was a productive meeting. It remains to be seen what comes out of it. I think there's room here for a bit of diplomacy to try to improve cooperation where cooperation can be found, but also to take a firm line for U.S. strategic interest, and you really do need to take a firm line with regards to Putin on the Ukraine and with regards to Putin on election meddling. Those aren't mutually exclusive positions.
I understand, Tara, but sometimes perception is not as important as reality, and you think of the way in which Donald Trump has been portrayed over the past year or so, that he's taking too soft a line on Putin, that Putin can eat his lunch, that Putin's smarter than he is, when in effect you look at what he has actually done. What he has done is so different from the perception. Going after Syria, which is Russia's best ally in the Middle East, going after him like no president ever has, taking a very different line on Iran, which has been allied at various times with Russia. And of course, the announcement this week that he's open to selling oil and gas to Eastern Europe. And of course, that's exactly how Russia has sort of held those states in a kind of a blackmail situation with their oil and gas. All of these areas which really get under the skin of Putin instead of sort of making him feel good.
Well, I agree that on Syria we've been making progress. We've been making progress on Raqqa. I do think that with regards to Russia and Syria, though, we haven't really seen the administration take a firm position in terms of pressuring the Russians with regards to their dealings with Assad.
Well, what about the Tomahawk missile attack on Syrian Air Force? I mean, that was a direct shot over the bow or into the bow of Russia.
Fully agree. That was a strong measure, and I supported that on air at the time. I think in the bilateral discussions right now, it would be interesting to hear if the use of Assad's chemical weapons came up, because that is something that Russia can play a role in trying to reduce and can play a role in pressuring Assad. I think it would be wonderful if those issues were at the forefront of this conversation. A ceasefire, all for ceasefires, but you have to make sure the parties in the ceasefire are going to carry them out. Russia and Putin and Trump can declare a ceasefire, but until the parties on the ground are being, directed or agreeing to that, we have to see. It's too early to say. This is very preliminary reporting, and we don't really know the terms of the ceasefire. We don't know, has Assad been made aware of this, and is he going to be cooperative? So there's still a lot of questions here, but any sort of agreement on a ceasefire is a good thing. So I'm going to praise that preliminary, but we don't really know the terms yet. So ceasefires are good in theory, but a lot of times you don't necessarily see them pan out on the ground.
And also, what Russia says is good in theory, but in reality, it's very often quite different, isn't it?
True. You raise another good point there. The rhetoric in terms of the agreements that may or may not happen in these bilateral discussions at the G20, not just with President Trump and Putin, but with other leaders as well. What really matters here is the follow-through. What really matters here isn't the rhetoric that Putin spews about being cooperative on Syria against ISIS, because the reality is we haven't seen ISIS be the primary focus of Putin in Syria. We've seen them going after others, and we've seen a lot of the support leaning towards the Assad regime. So actions speak louder than words, and that's what I'm curious to see after this, what changes on the ground.
I'm going to ask you one last question. It's about security of the meeting itself, because there are only 6 people in that room. There are two interpreters, Putin and Trump and Lavrov and Tillerson. 6 people. If there's any leak coming from that meeting, where do you think it would come from?
That's $1 million question, but it could come from any of those parties in there, both intentionally or unintentionally, and it could come from somebody without claiming that it came from them. So it remains to be seen if there's an official readout of the meeting.
Right.
President Trump and Tillerson might put out an official readout, which isn't going to give us the nitty-gritty that we all want to know. It's not going to give us the tone. It's not going to give us the body language, and it's not going to give us the precise wording. But I mean, Putin might leak out information, and we don't really necessarily know the veracity of that information. So I'll be curious to see if there is an official readout or even a transcript potentially. I'm not sure if there was a stenographer or anyone recording this meeting in any way.
Interesting. Very interesting. Tara Mahler, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.